Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Paul. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Looking forward to talking about something that's been like 5 years in the making on tonight's show.
But before we get to that, there was a little bit piece of news that occurred right after we aired our episode last week, and that's the fact that Neil Druckmann, the creator of The Last of Us, is stepping away from the TV series as season 3 is still being written, or
Yeah, hadn't even started yet. This did drop like the next day after our recording, but Neil Druckmann did say he posted from the Naughty Dog page that he was stepping away before they begin any meaningful work on season 3, and he said he was going to go work on focus completely on Naughty Dog and future projects, including some new games called The Heritage Prophet, and his responsibilities as studio head and head of creative. And I put, for folks who are listening to us, I put the little meme that he made for, that he posted on his socials. But he has a little quote that thanks Craig Mazin for all the work that he did on bringing The Last of Us to life as far as the live action version. And I know we had a lot of thoughts about season 2. and Sarah that's when I saw this at first, I was just like, wow, this is huge as far as just like he was a co-creator of the show and listening to the podcast, and after each episode, so for seasons 1 and 2, and some of the changes that they made. But I just wonder if this was something that was the result of just truly was a situation where he was feeling spread too thin, and he was just like, you know what, I'm gonna go back to Naughty Dog full time, or was this a reaction to some of the mixed reviews of season 2?
We'll never know what it was that triggered it. I mean, politically correct. There can always be speculation, and unless he comes out, but then again, is that the publicity answer that we're getting, or is that actually what happened?
Right.
So I think also multiple things can be true. He can suddenly feel like maybe the TV stuff, especially based on the criticism that season 2 received, is not for him. Granted, it's hard for me to put that as 100% the reason, because if you think about it, he encountered the same backlash from video game players when the second game was released. I mean, there were a lot of people who were upset, especially before they got into the later half of the game, arguably the later 2/3 of the game. So I don't know if it's simply because TV fans are loud, because when you're in the game space, I can only imagine how loud those fans are. So this story overall is so beloved that there's going to be a big reaction either way. And that's actually also just a telling of how much the characters he created mean to people, whether it's through the game or whether it's through live action TV. Like, the characters he created resonate and bring out emotions from people, and whether good or bad, but at least like when people are upset, it's because it's just like, but I love Joel so much. And then you're just like, oh, it's heartbreaking.
Or I love Pedro so much.
And then the fact that it's played by Pedro Pascal, who's in everything these days. So it's just, I find it interesting, the timing of it all, just because, I mean, season 3 hasn't been written. Well, I mean, it's kind of been written, because we know
Yeah.
Weird thing. I totally understand, but I feel like they should have probably written seasons 2 and 3 simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because they go so hand in hand, but at the same time, it like there are a lot of substantial things that are different. Um, so I mean, I just have the same opinion that I did after watching the season 2 finale. Like season 3 will be so telling for this
Yeah. Yeah.
show
I agree.
overall. Um and I guess time will only tell. But yeah, so very interesting. Yeah. Whew. Okay, that brings us to Ironheart. We're going to close out the show with the last 3 episodes, um, including episode 4, Bad Magic. When Parker suspects Riri of wrongdoing, she knows she has to figure out the sources of his powers. Episode 5, Karma is a Glitch. Riri sets out to create a suit unlike anything she has ever attempted, but at what cost? In episode 6, The Past is Past, Riri builds her most powerful suit yet, but she's unsure if it's enough to beat Parker and the Hood. Will, what did you think about the conclusion of Ironheart season 1?
I really liked it. I really did. I think it was a very good series. I was, as I shared last week, I was really enjoyed the first 3 episodes. I think they did, as the episodes progressed, the series did get better. But whenever starting the I was really locked in these last 3 episodes. I had planned only to watch episode 4. I think it was like Friday night or something like that. And the next thing I know, I just blew right through all 3 of them because I was really engaged. And especially with the way things had started with the 4th episode with Joe and Parker and 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 all. And of course, I was able to make it overall spoiled to be free of the big reveal that I joked as I teased at the beginning of our show. That's been 5 years in the making, but overall, we'll definitely get into it. But I did really enjoy the last 3. I mean, not that I mean of course there were some quibbles. I'm not gonna, like I said last week, there are some things that uh, not gonna be 100% like rose-colored glasses and overlook those areas. But yeah, but I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. So what part wasn't spoiled with the reveal? Because you told me last week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's more. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and put it out there. Yes, we did finally get Mephisto, and I did. You know, they did sort of do the head fake in story with Dormammu, um, and all that, but yeah, but they did drop the Mephisto of it all, and we've all been thinking he was going to show up after WandaVision and everything since in Phase 5, but but just a confirmation of what I said last week on last week's recording. That's where I just it was one of those things where I was just like, when it did happen, I was like, okay, well, it wasn't too big of a stretch to think that it was going to happen, but like I said, over the last few years, we've all thought that it was going to happen, and then it didn't. So that's why I didn't. So that's why I didn't get my hopes up too much.
Hmm. I just remember me saying being skeptical, and last week you like shutting that down by being like, "No, Sarah, they cast somebody. It's happening." And I'm just like, so like I don't to me it
Yes.
wasn't like a big reveal, but I understand and I don't want to quibble about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess before we get into the Mephisto of it all, Parker's arc,
Yeah.
because he leads to it, obviously. And because we start these 3 episodes with a flashback that kind of runs throughout the course of the 3 episodes, but at very awkward times, in my opinion. And the flashback is to a heist that him and his cousin are doing. And I guess it kind of goes wrong. The police get involved, and he ends up running down an alleyway, and that's where Mephisto shows up to give him a way out. And in exchange, he will give him something, or he will take something that Parker will not miss. And so that's kind of the origin story of how Mephisto found Parker. But on top of that, it gets revealed that the person who they are breaking into the house is his father, who turns out to be a shareholder in all of these companies that last week we were talking about the various like tunnels and a few other companies that they were stealing from and taking shares of control over, because this is a personal issue between him and his father, because when his mother died, he got kicked out of the house at the age of 12, I believe.
Yep.
And so that's what's driving Parker. So overall, Will, what did you think about Parker's arc?
I know last week that was one of the things that we spent some time talking about, as far as what were the driving motivations for him and his life of crime, and or trying to gain control over these companies. And so we did get that, and so at its core, it was daddy issues. and it was one of those things where, I mean, whenever it was revealed to be his father, that was one of those things I did. I was kind of like, okay, it. Whenever he walked into the office, I think it was episode 5 when he confronted his dad, and
Yes.
And saw they saw him sitting there and the conversation. I was like, okay, this is his father. I see where this is going. But it made sense for Parker, especially whenever he does sit down in Mephisto's pizza parlor to work out the deal, and say, and whenever Mephisto questions him, like, what do you want? And as far as like, and Parker was like stunned. He's like, I don't know. But but ultimately he does get there where he wants to be filthy, greasy. What's greasy rich? I never heard any. That was a new one for me, greasy rich. But it was that money and that desire for control, and to get and to fill that void, I guess, or to get back at his father too, just to take over those companies. So it wasn't like end of the world, big time, Thanos level type of motivations. No, but it was consistent with what we have gotten with this show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to argue that the points in these episodes don't make sense. It's all relative to TV shows and to what we were given in the first 3 episodes, so everything seemed fine. My issue though is I can't help but think this could have been written better.
How so?
It just could have, because I would have been more on board with Parker had there been more of this background in the first half of the season.
Got it. Yeah.
It just felt rushed, leaving it all to the 3. And I swear to God, episode 5 was like the never-ending episode.
It was long.
I was just like, and we're done. No, there's still more. There's still like it just felt like they were suddenly at a marathon, and I'm like, how did we get here?
Yeah, it was a lot packed in there. I agree.
Yeah, so I just feel like it could have been written better, because we could have spent more time with him especially in his past.
Mm-hmm.
We could have understood more about, because I think the intention was that it would be this big reveal of like, oh, that's why they were doing this. And I was like, oh, that's clever, but I would have appreciated knowing that and understanding it more at the beginning. Like I don't think it worked so much as a reveal. I
Mm-hmm.
think you could have like made us understand that piece of it, of what they were doing with the shares, and then maybe save the fact that it was all to overthrow the father.
Yeah.
It just like, I just think that, and then also his relationship with cousin John,
Mm-hmm.
like you need to feel empathetic for him, and I don't. I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel empathetic for him. I don't feel anything, because at the end of the day, he's not my villain.
Right.
He's a puppet.
Yep.
And see, that's the other thing, that if we're going to have a puppet villain for these 6 episodes and only get the big boss at the end, and I know that. I've known that since the beginning. We all have, because the hood is really in control. Like when
Mm-hmm.
like not even Mephisto, I'm saying, but the hood is. So it's like, well, what's the point of Parker? I don't feel anything for him. So overall, like that was my big thing about Parker's arc and how they ended it. I just was like, can we get to Mephisto? Okay. And then we have the scene, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I mean, that I think that's a good point that you as far as the motivation, and also who was really in control. It was it really was the hood itself that was sort of driving things, and it really, and one thing I did like about, and it really gets, I guess, more into Mephisto than Parker, but
Mhm.
it was how Mephisto's, you know how the devil operates, basically. It was, he basically, like, I'm going to give you the tool, in this case being the hood, um but but I'm going to leave it to you to, to figure out what you want to do with it. And because he basically, he saw, because he sees in his he sees in his victims, there's a hole, there's a long game, they're long game for something. And we'll get into RiRi's long game here in a bit. But so I did like the way that they utilized that, and I agree with you that I think if they had, even if they had, like, had that scene, in the pizza parlor earlier in the series, um, but not necessarily reveal Mephisto, but just the just have
Oh no,
the
I'm not
voice.
talking about that.
Oh, okay.
No, no,
Okay.
I don't want the Mephisto. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I wanted more about Parker, kid,
Got it.
father issues, more about, like, there he's what? In his like 30, like late
He's
20s.
probably
He
late
lived a
20s.
life
Yeah.
before this. So I just think that there's a way to that makes more sense and feels less just like a fill-in flashback,
Got it. Okay.
that allows you to get or be more empathetic towards him
Hmm.
and how he got to that point.
Hmm.
Because if you look at the flashback that we were given, like the opening flashback of episode 4,
Yeah.
John is in control,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. He
Okay.
is. Yep.
So then it makes me question, okay, so I understand the hood manipulates people and the power and all of that, and you see visions. But I'm supposed to feel empathetic that that occurs with him. So where is like the flashback showing me that he's a good guy?
Hmm.
And then how him and John, like, I know they tell us. I know they
Yeah.
tell us he got kicked out as a 12, but I'm also a person who I feel more empathetic when I can see things.
Yeah.
I mean, this is visual storytelling, so I think there could have been more flashbacks that allow his character to get to that heist
Hmm.
for it to go wrong, which I also didn't really follow how it went fully wrong. I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Or even because it arguably we also enter his story at such an awkward time.
Hmm.
I mean, he already has Stewart and they're already doing a heist. We never circled back around to that heist and really what that heist in that first episode was all about, and because that went wrong.
Yeah. It did. It did.
Really, they did circle back to it.
No, no, that heist went wrong, but you're right.
Yeah.
It didn't. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it was. Yeah, they never. I don't think they connected the dots there,
No.
other than just to get Rampage. It was just like he failed, and it was just sort of like
Yeah.
it was just a MacGuffin to get Riri on their team.
Right. Right. And but we don't and then we hear about how they were formed, but I don't I don't have a good sense of timeline either in this show, and for a lot of the characters I'm just like, well, okay, so how long were you guys a team? Because
Yeah,
then I could really feel like that betrayal that happens. And it's just there's awkwardness for me. Like I'm
yeah,
not, again, my point, I'm raising these points not because I'm saying, oh, it doesn't make sense. No, I understand and I can see where like it makes sense, but
hmm,
even when things make sense to me, I'm like, well, but I didn't feel it.
yeah, yeah. I hear you.
I didn't feel what I know their intention was.
Yeah, yeah,
Um like and the Mephisto stuff, yeah, I like it. I just and I like the casting and the scenes were fine with both Parker and with Riri at the end. However, I could not help but think. I had two thoughts going on while I was watching both scenes.
hmm,
Both scenes. I had two thoughts going on. I had been like, Mephisto, you're supposed to be this big bad villain that we've been waiting for, and you're telling me that out of all of like the billions of people that live on Earth, you decide to like open make this deal with Parker? Like, I want to understand more about why Parker. And then that brings me to Riri. I'm just like, so I guess Parker kind of brought you to Riri, but I'm still like, you
that's it.
I just well, yeah, okay. Okay. He brought him to Riri. So okay, I'll give you that. But
Yeah,
it just was like, I was like, so you're just hanging out in Chicago? Like, and but you also brag about all of these other billionaires.
yeah,
Which does make sense. The other thought that just was like constantly going through my head, arguably throughout the entire finale, is okay, so why Ironheart? Why are you using Mephisto and Ironheart if I'm as a viewer, knowing what crappy marketing you did for this show,
hmm,
knowing like the lack of like what I feel as though support from the studio, there isn't a season 2 guaranteed. And
hmm,
yet you are utilizing this villain that we've been waiting for and then leaving us on a cliffhanger, and I can't sit here and say like, oh, and we're going to see that next season.
yeah, yeah,
Because I'm like, I don't know.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't like it, that like to me, I think it's hard to really be engaged when I'm just like, but I don't know if this promise is going to get fulfilled,
yeah,
so I don't know how much trust I can have or like how much investment I can have right now in what's going on. Because
yeah,
I don't know if I'm ever going to get a if I'm going to ever get the resolve that I need after this.
Yeah, I completely. That was one of my first thoughts after the episode ended. Um,
Mm-hmm.
was okay. You do this grand reveal, and you do this grand, and you have your protagonist in this show literally make a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
Um, and you and I do want to get into that deeper, but
Well,
to your point though,
you can do it
no,
now.
but yeah. But before we do, but I wanted just to add my thoughts to your thought about the why of the why of all, we, as I joked at the beginning, we've had WandaVision, we've had Loki, you've had all these other opportunity, Agatha, all these other opportunities to introduce this character into Phase 5, and and this is the show that you decided to do it on. Which, on the one hand, I'm like, if you're going to like introduce this type of character, I guess the way that they introduced Mephisto, to me, it I actually do like it in the sense that it's a character. Ironheart is, other than her exploits in Black Panther 2, and it was very clear. It seemed to be very clear in the show that not many people, other than just a handful of folk, actually know what all she did. Um, you, you know, in Black Panther 2. I mean, I think maybe her family does, and that's about it. It's not like she's a part of the larger, other than the Wakandans, and even at that, her for various reasons. I mean, money being one, just to try to bring Letitia Wright back, but at least in universe, um, she isn't. I don't. She's much because of her choices that she's made. She's not very comfortable calling Shuri to come help her. So yeah, I mean, it is very curious, that that RiRi's the one that they bring it in. But I do like it in the sense, it does for me. It does make sense in a sense where you have the tech versus the mystical bridge in these shows, whereas the other ones really rely, as far as WandaVision, Loki, and even Agatha, really was heavily leaning in the mystical side. So
Mhm.
if you're going to have a bridge between the two worlds, RiRi would be in this phase, looking at everything, she would be the one that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, why, like, it occurring in the story makes sense.
Yeah,
But I don't understand, and maybe it has to do with the whole regime change
yeah,
and other things that
yeah,
have to, but to me, it a part of the reason why I just have to say, for me it felt flat, was because I don't trust that we're gonna
yeah.
get the continuation that
Oh,
this deserves. And
agreed.
also, it's a kind of finale and leaves you at this place where you're like, we're just getting started.
Yeah,
Like, I suffered through 5 episodes with Parker. Can we not? And I'm not even saying Mephisto needs to be the bad guy. I'm saying that more about this exploration of the fact that RiRi did make the deal to bring back
mhm,
Natalie to actual life, in exchange for her soul, and what that means, and also Zeke. I mean, now Ezekiel is out there. He, in his own way, made a deal with the devil, and now has millions of dollars of weapons in his body, and he doesn't know what to do with his anger. So
mhm.
he's obviously going to go and talk to Bruce Banner. But I just feel like, for those two characters in particular, and then also Natalie, like, seeing how the AI version kept wanting to be real but was walking this fine line.
Yeah,
Now she's Like they could. There's so much potential.
Yeah.
That it angers me because
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
it pissed me
uh,
off too. Yeah.
yeah, it's like this weird thing where you're just it's kind of similar to my thoughts on this little show that you've watched called Krypton,
Mm-hmm.
and how it was just like we were
Yep.
in it
Yep.
and then you just take it away from us.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, her being that whole bridge through mysticism, that's great, especially because they brought in I'm blanking on her name,
Oh,
the
Zelma.
Mavel
Zelma. Zelma
Zelma.
Stanton.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Zelma. I just rearranged all the letters of her name for some reason. But Zelma was good. I'm
Yeah.
also partial to that actress because she appears on Exo Kitty, also on Netflix.
Mm.
So um I already know her, but I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, can she go and be in the next Doctor Strange movie, please and thank you?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, they definitely with the whole the chromatage, they dropped all the proper names as far as between, of course, her mother, being there, and then the whole sorcerer supreme, all the elements were there for like, I know a lot of people have been saying Strange Academy, so but again, to your point, will we get any of those kind of things? Because there has been within universe, because outside of universe there has been all these like changes, and clearly when this show, because it was like greenlit back in 2000, I remember, and
Yeah.
I think we had and I think filmed in like, I think it was supposed to like come after Black Panther 2, so it's, but they just kind of buried it, Disney did, and they drop it here right before, after Thunderbolts and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, yeah, well, and to your point, it's just like we've had so many other things in the MCU where they just will drop something and then it may never come up again, or it may, like, we finally did get the Celestial finally this year with Captain America 4, but yeah, but I like,
It
yeah,
it's not even about things coming up again. It's more
yeah,
about because things have come up again, like to your point, but by the point that they do,
yeah,
people don't care.
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
meaning is lost. Like
The meaning's
that's the
lost. Yeah,
issue. The meat
yep,
and that continuity is lost. And yeah, there's so many problems.
yeah.
But where were you gonna go next?
Oh no, I was just wanted to go. I mean, I did like, speaking of Zelma and the whole mystical, and just going back really quickly to one thing, just going back to Riri and the choice that she
Hmm.
had to make, and something I've just been thinking about, a little bit, given that she did make this deal with the devil, and had several thoughts on it. On the one hand, I was like, just given speaking of Zelma and her mother, who also, and Zelma's mother, they're all into spirituality and those types of things, and just also just given it, you know not only the mystical stuff, but also just from growing up, the African American characters. So there's also the church and community influence and stuff. Part of me was just like, all right, it, and this is kind of a universal thing too, not just for Black folk, but would, if knowing what and also given that Zelma had already warned about Dormammu, these demonic forces that are, and evil forces, especially how Zelma's mother, reacted whenever whenever Riri was sitting at the table with Mephisto. Part of me was like, when when they had the deal, part of me was just like, she's probably, she rationally, she wouldn't think that she would accept it, But then I was just thinking about, you brought up Natalie, and also just how Natalie was formed, and just thinking about connecting it back to Parker as far as like what Mephisto, and with the whole Faustian story, which is the origins of Mephistopheles. It's always preying on people's desires and their wants, and thinking about RiRi's motivations for building a suit, and she was held on to it, the line of, oh, because I want to help people, I want to do this, but it really was just her coping mechanism to deal with the denial of just what happened with Natalie. So part of me was like thinking, like, whenever he helped sort of facilitate this dream, and again, the blend of the tech and the mystical to generate the Natalie AI, just to like give her, just to push her along furthermore, so that then whenever they do have that conference, that sit down discussion after she takes the cloak away from Parker, he can grant her big wish, to
Oh,
to
so
have
you're
the
saying
real
that he
to have
did
the real
that?
Natalie back. Hmm?
He did that? He
Oh, I
took the
think he
AI
he
away?
set things. I was just thinking he helped set things in motion to bring, like you said, to bring her and Parker together, and then of course her taking the cloak away from Parker, and
Okay.
then
How did he
yeah.
bring her and Parker together?
Oh well, like uh, the you know well the Parker, he had to deal with Parker,
Right?
and and so Parker, the heist, the one heist that goes wrong,
Right.
so that they end up killing,
Yeah.
Rampage,
Yes.
so that RiRi will then fall into that gap, so to fill in the tech role. So then basically,
Okay,
um,
so
yeah,
I mean I understand what you're saying. I just
yeah, yeah,
I I don't know if I'm not on the train that he brought them together, but
okay,
he definitely I can see how he could have been involved because they were using magic. Granted,
yeah,
Zelma warned her beforehand. She's like, it's going to come with a cost, and
yeah,
it like that was the cost, and it
yeah,
makes all the sense in the world.
hmm,
Um, and I do appreciate the whole sentiment that this entire season, to avoid, from what her mom says, to avoid dealing with her grief, she inadvertently creates an AI version of her dead best friend,
yeah,
only to then have that taken away, and she needs magic to fully charge her suit because she needs to fight magic with magic. And what can magic do that technology can't do? Literally bring people back from the dead.
yeah,
So like all of that is great. My thought this whole time was more like, poor Gary. I'm just
yeah,
gonna say it. I thought I found it kind of humorous, the fact that it's like this big emotional event, and all my mind is going, I'm like, "Oh, poor Gary. Nobody cares." like, like I it's also funny. It was more funny to me because of the whole scene with the flashback between her and Gary when she was a kid. That was a
mhm.
really good
That was a
scene.
great scene.
And
That
the
was one of
mom,
my favorite scenes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Gary gets no love in the end. No
yeah,
love.
yeah,
They like, for a moment when she was really contemplating, or supposedly contemplating the deal, I was surprised she didn't like be like, Gary died that night too.
hmm,
But
yeah,
she completely didn't. I was like, what?
yeah,
So it's kind of like that was humorous. Once I got over that, which obviously I haven't, but once I got past that, um, I also just I really do appreciate the way that scene was edited, because
oh yeah,
they arguably what we're seeing is the future, while simultaneously he's using it as one of those visions of like
Hmm.
what could be, and
Yeah,
it's done really well.
it really is.
um but yeah, just poor Gary.
Yeah,
And I can't really sit here and like been like, well, that was a stupid decision. I mean, we know it was a stupid decision, but we
yeah,
also know she was blinded by grief that
yep.
she clearly hasn't dealt with.
Hmm.
Um, Granted, it's been 5 years. That was the other thing that kept bothering me. Like, it's been 5 years.
Tell you the
And
grief. Yeah,
what but yeah, I don't know how far I wanna go down this road because
let's go down it. Let's go down it.
no, because it has, well, okay. My issue is what I'm struggling to articulate is more about how there are scenes throughout the show where the mom, Ronnie,
Hmm.
she she clearly also has grief that she's still working through.
Yeah.
Okay?
Hmm.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. But then she judges for how her daughter is grieving.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, but you haven't worked through your shit either. So, and also, like, did she just run off to MIT as soon as this happened? Um, I don't understand. And I
Yeah.
don't understand the shop. The
Mm.
shop is clean. People have been in there. But
Mhm.
are you guys not utilizing the shop? It's been 5 years. So what are we doing with this shop? Okay?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's, there are these little things. Yeah, there's definitely plot conveniences for sure. But I hear what you're saying about the shop. Well, I mean, I think well, I guess Ronnie kept it. If I recall, I think there was a line where Ronnie just did mention that she was keeping up the shop, but it was but again, Riri running away because she it was dealing with the grief and all that. She just did not want to go there because it would always take her back to that moment when Gary and Natalie were
Right,
killed.
right. She
Yeah.
gets panic
So
attacks.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that all makes
But no,
sense to me.
yeah. Another thing too, as far as the grief and I appreciate you putting in the note about the Star Trek of it all.
Mhm.
It was Xavier and Riri and the whole Natalie of it all, as far as like, because Natalie the AI was just in so many ways this is the AI just reinforce for how she wanted to go meet, how Natalie the AI wanted to go see Xavier, just and how rah they were for it. This again reinforces how much of the AI was out of Riri's consciousness, um, as far as just looking very inwardly and not understanding like how his dead sister showing up would probably not, without any warning or any planning or preparation, was not going to go well, which of course came to fruition in this episode. And I like and I like their, before all that happened, I did like their back and forth, Riri and Xavier's conversation about as far as the Star Trek of it all, with where she saw herself as Uhura and he was like, no, I see more Spock. you know and
Mhm.
and is it was just very complicated, as far as the how she handles emotion and stuff. And I did like how they use the Star Trek of it all to help them mend things, but and I wish, and this is where I do feel like things were a bit rough. One of the things I did have a quibble with was how rushed the him coming back to when they were in the shop, and
Yes. Yes.
how he, yeah, he got the letter, he got the note that she left for him, and and yes, he does come, and he still does acknowledge that, look, I ain't cool with this AI shit that you did with Natalie. but I still feel like the resolution of it all and everybody being all huggy good with each other again did not that it needs to be belabored, but I just felt that it didn't feel earned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also still very unresolved because he may be on team Riri, but
Yeah.
I don't think we saw a single scene between him and AI Natalie either before she
No.
disappeared.
No.
So it was like a plot thread that
Yeah.
was going to somewhere, and they tried to make very prominent because of his initial reaction to
Mm.
Natalie.
Yeah.
And then they just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like,
Because
well, I'm
yeah.
glad I
Because
didn't invest too much in him.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Because that was one element there where if they had maybe another episode or two, they really could have, and we talked about this some last week as well. Just the whole reanimating dead deceased relatives or friends or and really getting into that and it did some, but it was very surface level, and I just felt that it just didn't. Yeah, that was an area where I thought that they could have explored a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but other than that, I mean, like I said, I mean, I know we hadn't talked too much about Zeke, and that was the other thing too, as far as the Zeke of it all, and they, he, whenever, and again, I guess maybe it's just low emotional intelligence on RiRi's part, as far as like after all he did, after it, causing him to end up in jail, and of course they have Obadiah being like seen as this great man who is lose her son, like ruins the family name, even though but because of the cover story. But I just felt that was another area where I felt like where two things. One, Riri think whenever after all the things are done, and she's like, hey, are we cool now? And of course it's like, no, I got to hold on to my anger. I'm like, bruh, really? Like, what are you? I don't know. I don't know. Something about it just didn't sit right with me. But also, um, yeah. So and again, to your point, it's just like, okay, where is this going to go in the future? Where they leave this out there, and will we ever get any resolution for it? Down the line, because
Yeah.
yeah,
I with Zeke, I'm very similar to you where I thought him and Riri had really good on-screen chemistry during the
mm.
first half. We knew that there would be consequences, but damn. Damn, those consequences for Zeke like went real up. And then yeah, the fact that Riri, and I don't know if you can even use the low emotional intelligence. That's just, to me, I was just like, well, that Riri, I can't root for you right now. I
Yeah, yeah,
really like this is worse than what you did with cousin John, in my opinion.
yeah,
So, I mean, you literally ruined his life, and you're like not even batting an eye.
yeah,
Like there, it just felt weird.
yeah,
It felt like, okay, we're supposed to accept this, and she's not, like, she's not blaming herself. There's nothing.
yeah,
So it was really bizarre.
yeah.
And then she even goes and uses his hideout too.
Mhm.
I was just like,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
wow,
yeah.
wow, wow. You're someplace else. I don't know what happened, but damn.
Yeah. I would
Um,
like the one thing I did. Yeah, I did like the again two things with using a hideout, and also use this as a segue to another thing with
oh,
the.
I wasn't done with Seek, but okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, no, I have completely lost my train, but yeah,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, I was just going to say I like the use of the hideout again, just showing her using the science again to try to deal with the mystical. And then but also it also I did like them using the science and her tech skills to be able to at least hold her own a little bit with the Parker's gang, with the bubble and some of the other things. But because that was really about, as far, and also with Zeke, and bringing it back to Zeke real fast, with Zeke and Clown, Clown seeing Zeke letting her go, and then whenever Parker is questioning Zeke about, did you really do it? Did you do the deed? Did you kill her and stuff? And because of all the relationships that Clown had with seeing through Parker's BS after a point, how he was treating everyone, her backing Zeke, for that. But other than that, other than how unceremoniously they got rid of the gang, it was sort of like, okay, they were there, they served a purpose. At least they didn't get all killed.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the trend of this show. It's like
Yeah.
these unceremonious resolutions and characters moving on and leaving at this awkward, because I guess I just keep repeating myself. It's hard for me to invest in anything
Yeah.
because I knew in the beginning last week what these characters were and how the mechanisms that they served in terms of the show.
Yeah.
And then to see the follow through while not understanding this piece of the larger tapestry fully, it's just like, okay, I watched it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind a season 2, but I also am just like, but I don't know if we're gonna get it, so I'm not gonna put my hope on it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm being like RiRi, where I'm just shutting down and, and just being like, okay, that's cool, that's nice. Moving
Yeah.
on. I know we're
Yeah.
gonna get a Fantastic Four too, so let me go and invest in those characters.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, I think before we close out, one thing I will say, the first time I watched it I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about how the scene was shot, as far as whenever the choice was done, because they did that was very satisfying for me as far as that ending, even though, to your point, I don't know if we'll get anything from it, but at first I was like, was this sort of like just a plaything, as far, not plaything, but like imaginary future versus like actual future, until we dig at the end, and we did see the same kind of manifestations that Parker had with the powers, with the devil. We would see the physical manifestation of it, and we saw that with RiRi on her arm, when she was hugging the real Natalie. And the other cool thing too was just seeing Mephisto in the spoon, how he really appeared, even though it was just a quick glimpse, but I just really liked that. So those are some of the things that that scene I just really wanted to point out to before we close tonight.
All right. Well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, but before I do that, I have one thing. Just to those people who are who like shitting on the show. There you go. I like that. But I just had I had pulled that one just for them. But for audio folks, it was just when RiRi was whenever they were in the suit with shooting a bird, a slug. But with that, you can find me on all the socials at Will and Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd, on Blue Skies. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_n_nerd, and visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.